That's a nice guy. Oh, their wrist is funny. Oh, yeah, that's your type.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here this evening. If I could get everyone's attention for our panel discussion, it will be starting here in just a minute, so please grab a seat and enjoy this evening. So we are just so pleased and delighted to be able to host the North Shore Artists League, and we're so glad that you could join us this evening. Events like this at White Bear Center for the Arts are made possible because of donor support. Our donors are individual donors, foundations, family foundations. We write a tremendous number of grants to be able to provide all of the programs that you see in our catalog. And by the way, our catalogs, the fall catalog, is in the vestibule. Please take one on your way out this evening. So besides our individual donors, foundations, grants, we also have a number of business sponsors who make all of these events possible. And I would just like to recognize our premier business sponsors: Stonehouse Catering, Schweeters Building Supply, Excel Energy Foundation, Alan Canterud, New Studio Architecture, the White Bear Lake Lions Club, Boyum Baronshear, Mueller Memorial, F&M Bank, and Schweeters Pottery. The full list of our business sponsors are on the slide and also in our catalog. So please, again, take a catalog on your way out this evening. And if you have occasion to give our sponsors some business, they would really greatly appreciate that. One last note before you enjoy this program this evening. There are numerous pieces in our retail store this evening from artists who have work in the show tonight, so please check that out. Also, on a programming note, Jennifer Scholes still has room in her class, Introduction to Channeled Writing, on Saturday, October 12th from 1 to 4. So keep that in mind if you're looking for an enriching experience. So again, thank you for being here. I apologize, my name is Lori. I'm with White Bear Center for the Arts, and I welcome all of you. And I will turn it over to our panel for this great discussion. Again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. And thank you all for being here. Kathy Weinberg, and I am an oil painter. And I helped organize this group in 2019. The Cook County Historical Society was doing some strategic planning, and they actually have the Johnson Center Gallery that's on the main street of Grand Marais. And in that planning, I sat there and realized that they have a gallery, but they really didn't have artists in their strategic plan. And so a couple days later, they called me and they said, would you consider, organizing a meeting of some kind and see what the interest is? And I thought, well, maybe 8 people will show up for this. 30 came out of all of our boreal wilderness to say, yes, we as artists want to network, we want to know each other. And so we formed the league to be by artists, for artists. There are many other things that incorporate artists, but for artists to really have their own group and their own league and to be able to shape it the way they want it, to nurture their souls and their art, is what we are about. So we were so excited a year ago when meeting up with Karna and had an invitation that maybe we could do a show here. And so that is how we have landed here. And it is just a privilege to do that and be here. We have about 70 artists in our group. Not all artists, some are partners, our galleries and some of our commercial businesses that work with us. And the rest are all of our artists in various categories. We are multimedia, as you saw, and we believe that that is a cross-fertilization, if you will, between the arts, so that we are actually feeding on each other, we learn from each other, we inspire each other, we provide feedback to each other, and that has also been a real strength of the group. And we have, as you can see, everything: potters, writers, glass makers and painters and fiber artists. I want to, with that, give some thank yous to the White Arts Center, of course, and everyone here, which I'm sure you're finding they are so welcoming and so accommodating to all of us, but especially Karna Holub, who is the exhibitions manager. She has been a delight to work with from the beginning to end, with checklists of what needed to be done and responding to very last minute requests in some occasions. So thank you very much, Karna. And she is at the computer over here. And Renee Smith in the gift shop, who also has been a delight to work with. With that, well, to the league itself, we many hands made light work and very responsive league members to calls that I put out, and to sometimes just amazing how quickly things came back. Mary Matthews, who is one of our panel members here, coordinated shuttle drivers because the art had to get down here and it needs to be picked up and gotten back to home base. And our actual show committee, James Ellis, Jennifer Scholes, Mary Matthews, Renee Block. With that, I want to introduce our panel members before we actually start to roll. So if I will let each of you self-introduce who you are and what your medium is.
I was hoping we'd start on that end. So thanks for coming. I'm Greg Mueller. I'm from Lutsen, Minnesota, which is in Cook County. And thank you for ditching your pre-debate happy hour and coming here tonight. I do some sculpture, as seen in the show, but I guess for the most part I do public art, work with cities and private entities doing pieces out there in the world. So I was happy to be invited into this show as well. And if there's anything else you want me to add, I'll just pass it down.
Thanks everybody for coming. I'm Mary Matthews. I live in Duluth, Minnesota, and I am a contemporary quilter who works in the abstract, and I'm delighted to be here. So
I'm in awe. Thank you all for coming. My name is Mary Beebe, and I'm a fused glass artist. I live in Grand Marais. I've been making glass for 23 years now, and I am just in awe every day of what happens in my studio. It just comes out.
Hi everyone, I'm Karen Holman, and I'm a clay artist, and I had a brief stint living in Grand Marais from 2018 to 2020, and then the pandemic hit, a lot of things changed, and now I live in Hugo, just 10 minutes away from this wonderful art center that I take pottery classes and workshops. So thank you all for being here.
Special thank you to Karen. We had one of our panel members who had a health emergency and had to cancel at the last minute, and Karen stepped in graciously yesterday and said, I'll do it. So thank you, Karen. Our intent on the panel tonight is to really back up from the process of creating art to the inspiration, to the moment of what is the aha moment that made you create something, paint something, whatever it is. So we're going to be delving into that. What is your relationship with the muse? How do you get started? Where does it come from in a particular piece? So I thought my inspiration as a painter comes from various places. Sometimes it's plein air. I paint landscapes a lot, and so out in nature becomes my muse many times, where what does that wave look like? What does that cloud look like? What is the aha of the light hitting a particular area of landscape? And sometimes if I get really stuck, sometimes it's new materials. they're real inspiring actually, you know, and you go to an art shop or you go online and you say, oh, I need to create something with that. And also there is here and other places, take a class. Out of a workshop, there is a lot of inspiration and new creativity that can spark it for you. But in particular, I thought maybe if I share a piece, kind of a crazy piece, that represents both new materials, because I had this gold metallic ink that I had just gotten, and I thought I need to do something with that. And the other thing that inspires me is to do some poetry. So I wrote this poem, and it's called Tree Huggers. We are known as tree huggers, we who commune in the boreal forests. Some say it's the ozone saturating our brains, lifting our spirits to a higher plane. Perhaps it's just my green aura merging with trees like soulmates, a vibration felt though not seen. Whatever. Sun on the pine needles exhilarates. The breeze rattles the poplars until I must listen. Line bursting forth into spring, the mantle of orange and magenta cloaks the gray, only exposed when the wind combs her hair. Yes, I am a tree hugger. I don't know why. I don't really care, for my roots are deep, holding fast against yet unknown gales. My bones too rattle, even if no one listens. My spirit bows like the bending birch. Like the pine, my soul has a fragrance, kissed by sun and moon, nurtured by earthiness of loam, belying this mantle so gray. Wisdom rests in those who hug trees. So from that, I decided to create a tree hugger. And I was working with pastels, and I just kind of like started to put in a brooch, and then I took an eyedropper, and I had climate change on my mind, and so I decided to drop some of that metallic ink down from her eyes. And lo and behold, there it was, the Muse. And it's a study, it's a small 9 by 12 inch that I want to take into a larger piece. But that for me is often how my art starts, is in a poem. And sometimes the poem is the beginning and sometimes it comes after the piece. So Greg, you know, I'm facing a blank canvas, and it's the terror of that white canvas. Like, what am I gonna paint? What am I gonna put on this canvas? Well, I can't imagine in your shop and the metal work, and I'm so eager to hear how you get inspired, where it comes from.
Next slide, please. No, I appreciate the poetry too. As the older I get, the more I appreciate poetry. I think because you encounter more highs and lows. As a high school kid, I didn't appreciate poetry as much, but the more joy and pain you go through it, the more you appreciate it. Anyway, my blank canvas comes, my work ethic comes from my mentors. It's my father in the middle. He worked for 40 years for what was Minigasco. It was like the gas utility line in Minnesota. 40 years, never called in sick, never said, I need a personal day, not feeling it. And that in turn kicked me out of the house and get to work. Paper route, corn detassel, whole beans, get to work. And taught me a lot about tools and working with your hands, and let me borrow his tools from his shop and go down to the river valley every day after school and build tree forts and houses, and I think, or tree forts. And I think that's what inspired my interest in building. I didn't get into the video game craze. I wanted to solve a problem out in the woods. I wanted to like go out there and challenge myself to build something I could climb. And then at night, my dad would sneak out of the house with like a few big 16-penny nails and a hammer, and he would like just drive a few nice shiny nails in those tree houses to make sure I wouldn't like fall out of the tree. You know? Because he didn't question my craftsmanship, but I think he just wanted to protect me from falling out. That's Joe O'Connell on the left. He was the sculptor in residence at St. John's, where I went to undergrad. And it was the first time I went to undergrad thinking architecture, because we didn't have artists in our neighborhood. We just, oh, you like building, go to architecture. And when I got to St. John's, there was this sculptor. He was the artist in residence, carving stone and doing commissions for churches and hospitals. And I finally got the courage to ask him if I could take a class with him. So I learned stone carving from him. He passed away a few years ago, but really a big influence on work ethic. Every day you just walk by his studio and hear this ching, ching, ching hammer, and then jazz just coming out of the stereo system. And after undergrad, I went and apprenticed from the Catholic school to the Lutheran school. I went down to Gustavus and apprenticed with Paul Granlund, who was a premier bronze sculptor. He's got works in the Twin Cities. But the reason I show you these pieces is because I think I'm not sure I've ever had a blank canvas. I think I'm inspired by work ethic and being around mentors who had a work ethic that drove me to work and keep the fire burning, because like, was it Chuck Close says, you know, inspirations for amateurs, you just get to the studio and go to work. You know, even on bad days, you just got to keep going and keep sketching, keep making, and maybe number 7 or number 13 of those sketches become something. But you know, inspirations for amateurs, the rest of us get to work. So that's why I wanted to show you those slides. Should I keep stop? No. Oh. So the reason I show these slides is because this work is my more personal work. It's more abstract. It's more internal, grounded in abstraction and thinking about the contemplative gaze and wabi-sabi and found objects. But the bulk of my work is very public, and I think it comes from that time at St. John's, where if you know about St. John's, it's got a university that shares overlapping and adjacent spaces with a monastery. So you got all these like hipster college kids rubbing shoulders with monks in robes, and pretty soon that starts to rub off you, and I got this whole philosophy embedded in me about it's more about we than me, and art tends to be about me, my work, what I'm trying to say, and I kind of got grounded into me, that idea of we. So I still want to be an artist, but I found that public art was more for me because it involved the we, the community. So the upper left piece is the Burnsville. If you've been down to Burnsville, the new fire station #1. It's the ladder of trust and fire tetrahedron, and then a lit up fire hydrant, and it's about the ladder of trust. I'm on the Lutsen Fire Department, because when you live in a small town, you volunteer where you can, and I learned a lot about trust in your community, and once you pass your fire 1 and firefighter 2, you have to climb a ladder 20 feet tall, and the ladder is the only way the ladder is held up is by 4 firefighters who hold the 4 opposing corners by a rope. You have to trust that you can climb up that ladder and climb down the other side. And that was the impetus for that project. So when I applied for the Burnsville Fire Department commission, I proposed the idea of the ladder of trust being a lit up sort of feature piece. The piece to the right is Fergus Falls Central Lakes Park Bike Trail. If you know Central Lakes area, they turned their railroad into trails, Rail to Trail project. So this is when the Super Bowl came to Minnesota. They delved out money to communities for artists to propose pieces for play. And that goes back again to that childhood idea of play and community. And so I proposed that the bike trail have these big bike tire pieces that children could kind of play on. And then the little bridge you can't see in the middle is a homage to the railroad track where the 10 towns of Ashby and Fergus Falls, if you know that area, are laid out like a train track. Then the middle piece is a piece for Toledo, Ohio. It's for their hockey team arena. And the call was for a work that involved the community and green. It was a LEED design building. So me and another artist collected plastics from the community. The community could bring plastics, their old discarded toys and plastics, and we created what's called the Maumee River, which flows through Toledo, and we upscaled it to go up into the arena, so when you climb up the arena, you can go through the piece. And then the final piece is up in Grand Marais. It's called the Inspiration Exchange, and that was in collaboration with Amy Demmer, who was the director at the time. A piece where you can put little notes of inspiration or gifts for one another to exchange, kind of like a little free library for inspiration. But I show you those slides because that for me is the inspiration, is community and the we rather than so much for me. Where does art fulfill a social need, I guess is the idea. And I take that into my teaching. I taught for 15 years at Bowling Green State University, and a little bit at Gustavus, and a little bit at Bozeman, Montana. But I like that collaborative nature of working with students. So the top slide is the foundry process. So like the piece in the gallery has the cast iron elements. Anytime you're casting bronze or iron, it just isn't me, it takes a we. It takes a lot of students to pack your molds, pour your bronze, and work together to create your artwork. And it's that transformation of material, which I really like, where you go from making a pattern to transforming it into metal. But on the other side of high tech, I like to work low tech. These are some students I worked with at Gustavus where they could wrap themselves in packing tape, and then if you do sticky side up and then sticky side down, and then slice yourself off like a cast, you can make your own sort of body molds. And so the whole idea was taking molds of yourself, and then this was a new campus renovation. So how do we activate the space with art? And so the students all took molds of themselves. And how does the we create a kind of a public experience? So that was part of that too. I think I'll shut up printing now. Is that the last slide? Oh. And so what's happening right now in my studio, again, is what inspires me is Terre Haute, Indiana. It's a cool little town in Indiana, but the neighborhood I'm working with is 90% under the poverty level. And the mayor of Terre Haute said, we gotta do something about this. And they invited artists to submit proposals for Terre Haute. And so my idea generated, and it gets back to Kathy's questions, from the problem. Like, how do you solve a city's problem? And that's maybe where I cheat, where it's different from other artists who have to stand in front of the canvas or the potter's wheel. For me, it's, okay, a city or an entity gives me a problem, how do I solve it? And so my idea was, the Americans, how do we reach for Rives? Rives is the neighborhood in Terre Haute. I said, reach for them like you're reaching, like you're mailing them a letter, like you're reaching out to them. So I did this mailbox sort of flag sign with archways. And then the Benjamin Franklin Elementary is next door. There's like 600 elementary kids. And we all traced their hands, and now we're in the process of scanning those hands into a digital plasma cutter so that the archways around their splash pad park will have hands of all the students in the park. So again, that's what inspires me, is it's how can the artist play a role in community of the we versus me. But that's me. That's not for everyone, because I love painting and ceramics and sculpture, but for me, I think it goes back to that St. John's experience of the monastery, just you're part of a community and where can you make your contribution? And I'll shut up now.
Thanks, Greg. So we're gonna go from the world of lots of metal to the world of fiber. So Mary, on your video that's around the corner here, you are showing your design wall. Is that like a blank canvas for us painters?
It is, my design wall is like a blank canvas, but it's 13 feet long and 6 feet tall, so I don't make quilts that big. My quilts are getting smaller rather than bigger. But I've heard lots of words that I relate to in what both Greg and Kathy have talked about. I listen to a lot of jazz when I quilt. I find great inspiration in community, and part of what I've gotten out of being with the League is that quilting is a very isolating, but it's a very solitary activity. And so being able to commune with other artists, whether they're quilters or oil painters or public artists, is really helpful, because we all have some of the same emotions on the inside and angst about our work, and it's really helpful to have people to talk to about it. One of the benefits of Zoom is that I have a new group of quilters that I connect with, and one's in Mobile, Alabama, one's in Atlanta, and one's in Philadelphia. Because of Zoom, we can all share our work. So I'm finding more quilters as well as multimedia artists. So when I face that blank wall, and a design wall for a quilter, it, for me, is styrofoam covered with high-quality flannel. So when you slap a piece of fabric on the wall, it doesn't fall. It hangs there, so either sticks on its own or gets pinned. How I start, well, let's see. I've been sewing since I was very young, like 8 years old, and went through some of the normal progression. I made my first quilt in 2000, but I started getting interested in quilting in 2015 after I retired. I took some classes, Kathy talked about taking classes and finding inspiration there. Everybody that I took classes from had studied with the same person, and it was a woman named Nancy Crow, who's world famous and really the mother of improvisational and contemporary quilting. So a friend and I at the time decided that we didn't need to study with somebody who'd studied with her, we needed to study with her. So I've been spending some time every year in Ohio with a bunch of other people also studying with Nancy Crow, and I've been very grateful for that experience, and it's really helped me grow and expand my work. The inspiration on that blank canvas comes in a couple of different ways. One is that I've learned to use black and white fabric, particularly black, much the way a sketch artist would do with a drawing, and black and white becomes the foundation of most of my quilts. So you try it out in black and white, and then move to the next iteration in color. And so for sketching, I use much like a drawer uses a pencil or a painter uses a brush, I use a rotary cutter. And so I draw with a rotary cutter, and at my cutting table, just create shapes of fabric and then put them on the wall until something emerges. And then often it's making some sketches in black and white, and then exaggerating them, shifting them, changing them, evolve them over time. So the piece at the far end with the orange background actually was emerged out of 4 or 5 sketches, small sketches, and then were put together in a second draft and exaggerated and then moved into color. And actually, this was done once. I cut it up and expanded it, took it apart, redid it. The colorations were the same, but the quilt emerged from that. So 3 of the 4 pieces here sort of started out in that way, that are hanging in the gallery. The new way I'm learning is to work from photographs, and it sort of shortcuts. It's quicker to look at a photograph and exaggerate a photograph than it is to create a black and white quilt as a sketch. And so there's a 4th piece, the one called Currents, which is on that wall, and is my newest piece. Actually emerged from a photograph that I'd had in my catalog for a long time of an ice flow. And that's actually the 3rd, that quilt hanging on the wall is the 3rd iteration from that photograph. First it was done in black and white, it evolved again in color, and then evolved again, and then I have a 4th iteration on my design wall at home that maybe you'll see next year. So it's a slow process working in fabric, but it's been really rewarding for me. I've learned lots about color, and I really enjoy working in color. So color, at some point, color takes over in my process for inspiration. And I really enjoy using unique and unusual color combinations. So I strive to do that. So that's pretty much where it comes from. And then it's interesting to see when I'm trying to learn to work in series so that one quilt grows into the next one, grows into the next one. So you can really see an evolution along the way. And so that provides a lot of inspiration for me as well.
Thank you, Mary. Mary Beebe, in our video that we have around the corner here, you are seen with creating these shards of clear glass and fusing them. How do you get an inspiration for that?
Actually, that was inspired by Michael Tonder, the famous Michael Tonder, who has his beautiful pieces at the Essentia Hospital, and I made connections with him, and of course, he said, this is very easy to do. But that is just a most recent thing that I've been doing. What really inspires me, if I am to go on, what really inspires me is everything. Everything inspires me. You just sitting here, that chair is in awe. I know that I can put that chair into a design in glass. And I have a collection of the insides of envelopes. Frank Lloyd Wright is really somebody who inspires me. Thus, the Japanese inspired me. There is just about nothing that I look at. The ceiling right now, if you look at the geometric designs, that is an inspiration to me. And my brain, I think, works geometrically. So most of my pieces are have lines in them some way. But when you start working with glass, it almost becomes an addiction. And you find there's so many different kinds of glass. Glass isn't just, the silica sand that's mixed with whatever.
mic up.
powder. It comes in strings to make filet de bear. So I have pieces in the show that are using a lot of those different kinds of glass. You can take, for instance, my green bowl that you see in there, that is made with they're almost like noodles, just spaghetti pieces of glass. Stringers is what they're called. The crackled pieces of glass are simply made with powder and water, and then I literally crack it while it is wet before it's even gone in the kiln. The others, sometimes you cut hundreds and hundreds of strips of glass. Thinking of Mary, cutting many, many different pieces, and you set them on edge. Then you can also take those pieces and you can make them different ways, as was shown in the video, with just window glass, just plain window glass. And by cutting it differently, by putting it in a kiln, it will melt and it will surprise you every time. You have no idea what it'll do. So what happens in my studio? How does it begin? I begin with some crazy idea. Like, I wonder if this will work. And so I just try it. And then from there, many times my mentor, Sharon Frickman, who's an amazing artist in Grand Marais, and if you're ever at the Angry Trout, you have seen Sharon's work, or the clinic. But anyway, she says, have a plan for what you're gonna do with that glass before you cut into it. Because I'm sure Mary can say this too, it's not cheap. And so I sketched something that I think will work. And I always think of Chihuly, because Chihuly gets out there and he's got this can of paint, and he's got paintbrushes, and he just flaps it all over the floor and on whatever, and then he tells all his gaffers, that's what I want. And I kind of do that too in my sketchbook. I just scribble it down and say, well, just try it, and many times it doesn't work, but many times it does. Along with that, I'm inspired by the instructors that I've had, and many of them I have had to do online, as most of us have, especially during the pandemic. And it is like there's skills that are yet to be out there, and somebody has found them. Somebody has found the crackle method. Somebody has found the on-edge method. Somebody has found the voids in glass that can change the whole design of everything. Someone has found layering. It is just like, it's unlimited what you can do with glass. Temperatures, the glass, the design, the people who have discovered it sharing, and that makes me want to continue on. That makes me inspired to go on. So I'm not young anymore, but I'm not stopping. Just keep going. Just keep going with a new idea whenever I can get into my studio. The last thing I want to say, and I say this and I hope I don't cry, but making glass was therapy for me for almost 15 years when I cared for my husband, who passed away with Lewy body dementia. And I was lucky enough to read an article about an artist who used their art to get her through the same thing. And so art, making glass, was my therapy. And everybody has creativity in them. Every one of you sitting out there has it inside of you. And for you to get through a real hard part in your life, that's what you can do. be creative, go out there, paint, sew, cut yourself on glass, come up to the studio, I'll do it with you. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mary. It's interesting to hear the oral tradition that you have all tapped into and the mentoring that has been important in that oral tradition as the people that go before us are passing down what they know about their art. And it's very pervasive as we do this work. So, Karen, tell us about, now you're a ceramic artist, potter. You know, I just recently took a pottery class here at the White Bear Art Center, and the intent was to learn to use the wheel, of course, and basically a lump of clay on the wheel, and you got whatever you got when you were done with that. But I have understood from talking with you that that's not really the approach, that there is inspiration that goes ahead of that. And we are so interested to hear about your inspiration for a piece that you're going to share with us.
Thank you. So, Kathy and I had many emails back and forth because I'm filling in at the last minute, and it was, how do you start? And I said, well, we never, as potters, just start with a lump of clay on the wheel without knowing what we're going to make, because the process is such that you need to know you're going to make a cylinder or a bowl. It's a different process. But one of the things I told Kathy was, the thing that inspires me the most to work with clay is the clay itself. I just love working with clay. I love to touch it. I want all of you to be able to touch it. I love to touch it, I love to work with it. But my really joy is teaching others. And so I had the wonderful opportunity to teach, and especially children. I started assisting at the clay camps at Northern Clay Center, and that led to being part of their outreach department, where I'd go to schools and organizations, and I got to work with kids, and then I taught at some other art organizations as well as Silverwood Park, where we taught all nature-inspired arts programming. And I love to teach everyone about the natural world, but especially kids. So when I teach, I often bring found objects that I find in nature, and kids love to press it into the clay. They love doing that. And I love to do that too. And when Kathy told me she wanted me to talk about a specific piece and how this relates, and I do want to say that whenever I teach, I always tell whoever I'm teaching, the students, that the clay process uses all the 4 elements. Clay comes from the earth. It usually contains water, or we add water when we need to make it workable. It needs to air dry before it can go into the fire element, which is the kiln or pit, or sometimes with raku, you put them in a garbage can. So I always teach that. And no, I lost my train of thought, sorry. So I just love incorporating art or nature into my own artwork. And so Kathy did ask me to bring a piece, and you can tell I love it because I just keep touching it. But last October, I went to the chiropractor, and she was in St. Paul, where I used to live, and she said all the ginkgo trees dropped their leaves last night. We had a cold snap, and she's like, they're really heavy, and I had to take a shovel out and shovel the sidewalks because I didn't want the trick-or-treaters to trip and fall. And so then that got me thinking, oh, I could go back to my neighborhood in St. Paul and look for ginkgo leaves. And when I got there, the sidewalk was just covered with ginkgo leaves, and when I picked them up, they were soft and velvety, and I was like, oh, this would be so perfect for the clay, because they're not going to be too brittle like they are when you pick up a leaf that's been dried out, and it won't break apart, and it will press nicely into the clay, and it'll be easy to remove, because usually you don't want to fire a piece with the leaf on there. So I decided that the next time, so I collected some and I looked at them, and they had really interesting stems or ones that had different cutouts. And I've sketched ginkgo leaves before, and I've carved them on my clay pieces, but Mother Nature does such a wonderful job that I really like to use the natural. So the next time I went to the studio, I rolled out a slab of clay, and it was actually here at the White Bear Center for the Arts, and I decided I wanted to drop the leaves down, just like Mother Nature did, but it didn't really turn out the way I wanted to, and there was a little too many overlapping, so I did I did have to rearrange some. And then I laid them on the clay and I applied a white slip because I wanted there to be contrast. So you can see the second photo. And then we have a cabinet here of all molds, and I found one that had a bowl that had a square rim that I thought would be nice for a template, so I just traced around that and cut it out. And then I had to make a decision how I was going to glaze it. And what I love about ginkgo leaves is that beautiful kind of golden color that comes from them. So I looked at the glazes that we had here, and I saw that you could mix some celadons. So I was trying to aim for that upper left corner. So I mixed up some glaze, and then I tried a test piece. So that far left photo is when it came out of the bisque firing. So it went through 2 firings. It does a bisque firing and then a glaze firing. So that came out of the bisque, and I liked the contrast, and I wanted to keep those sharp edges, and I know that celadons are really translucent and they show texture, so that's what I went with. And you can see I had a test piece that I glazed, and it didn't actually get exactly the way I wanted it to be, but I had already mixed up the glazes, so I decided to kind of proceed that way, and you can see the final result. And then I'm also holding it, and then I also pressed a ginkgo leaf on the back and put my stamp on it. But now I'm excited for the ginkgo leaves to drop again, because I can just do it all over again, which is the wonderful thing about clay. You can just keep experimenting. I really think it's a lifelong learning process, and I've just enjoyed it so much, and I love sharing it with other people. And please take classes, they're wonderful. This is a wonderful facility. Thank you. Thank you, Kathy, for all you did.
Thank you. It's your turn. We've got some time for question and answers, and I know some of you have some burning questions that you can ask of these artists. Anybody? He did it? Jeannie.
So I have a question for Mary. Mary and I have been friends for a while, but what I know about Mary is that when she had to go to college, or chose to go to college, she had an opportunity to go study engineering or to study textile arts. And the thing that's amazing is that there's this precision in what she does. It's like she thinks from both sides of her brain. There's the art side and there's the science side. Can you say more about that, Mary?
Thanks, Jeannie, for the question. So on Honors Day in high school, I got the Betty Crocker Homemaker Award and a scholarship from Lakehead Pipeline.
There you go.
Because I was going to go to Michigan Tech and be a structural engineer. And then, so it was one or the other. So I did that for a year and then ended up studying textiles and clothing at Iowa State. So there is, I have sort of an engineering mind and how I think about things. But I've always loved fabric and how to make it work. And I really love there's a lot about the structural nature of quilting, because you're putting 3 layers together to create a piece. So in my head, it all seems to go together. I don't know. I like working with fabric and the way you're able to work with it. I think much more than making bridges would have been much more exciting. The other thing I was thinking about was, after listening to everybody, is there's always a surprise. I can't tell you how many times I've created a quilt top and thought, and then quilted it, and it becomes a whole different piece. And I'm always surprised along the way. And with quilting, I don't have to start with an idea fortunately, is compared to glass and pottery.
And often,
I feel, is this going in and out? Often, what I end up with is nothing like what I thought was gonna happen. And often, even after it's quilted, I have quilted quilts, finished them, held them up and thought, that looks terrible. Turn it 90 degrees and it's fabulous. So, we're upside down and it's fabulous. So there's always this pride element. So that's a little more than what you asked, but it doesn't seem far off from structural engineering for me, so.
Any other questions? Yes. Bring this to you.
I was just wondering if you could comment on how the league either plays into what you do or how it supports or enhances the work that you do.
For me, it's a motivator. It's like when I see other artists bring things in and share, it's motivating to me because while glass was therapy for me, there was so much other work that had to be done that I would sometimes not go into my studio. And so being with other artists is greatly motivational and inspirational too. And I could just say a little bit about, we met this summer at Tetagooch, and we just went around the group and all had our little bag lunches, and it was kind of social. We were gonna do some hiking, it got kind of rainy, but you know, just learning about each other really, really, really was a motivator for me. It's like, oh my gosh, you know, I learned something about her life. You know, it's like, she wanted to be free, you know, she went skydiving, and then she knew that was what she was gonna do the rest of her, in her retirement. She wasn't going to let somebody tell her, no, you have to do this, you know, leave your art aside. So, you know, just little stories from other people like that. North Shore Artist League is awesome in that way. Motivational, inspirational, and, you know, the friendships have really, really been great.
It was wonderful for me because I had moved to the area and really wanted to connect with other artists. And of course I was in a shared studio, so I was with other potters, but to be with everyone from all these different mediums really opened my eyes to how vibrant the artist community was, and it's been just so supportive. And one of my favorite things has been the 100 Days project that we've done together, and that's just been really wonderful to see what people come up with that they're going to try to do for 100 days, and it's pretty inspiring, and yeah, the support's been really great.
So with that, I'm going to suggest that you take your favorite artists into the gallery and quiz them if you want to get some more questions answered. I do want to give Jennifer a chance. Our writers are in our league, and tell us about your workshop and what we can expect, and again, when it is.
So, my name is Jennifer Scholes, and I'm a medium and an author, and I published 3 books, and I'm going to teach a class here on October 12th, and it fits with what you're talking about on the panel here, because what I do during channeled writing is enter a meditative state and allow the creativity to come through me. And it's a way of moving beyond the 5 senses into expanded consciousness, the expanded consciousness of the universe. I don't believe we can create something just from inside our own selves. We cannot give something that we have not also received in some way from mentors or inspiration or creative energy. So in the class, we're going to explore the tools that help us get out of our thinking brain and into our feeling body, and I don't mean feeling like drama, you know, ego drama. I mean feelings like sensation, and that is where we can connect to that creative energy. You don't have to be a writer. That's the medium I use because that's what I'm familiar with, but you can practice in the class and then take it into other areas of your life as well. So it's October 12th, Saturday afternoon. I don't remember the time. 1 to 4:30 or close to that. Anyway, it's in the catalog. You can find it in the catalog. Thank you.
So grab a catalog on the way out, and I would encourage you to also look at many of the other offerings. Fabulous, fabulous play studios, if anybody wants to get into that. And again, thank you all for being here and giving up the debate time. I hope you have it all recorded. And we thank you to the White Bear Arts Center for hosting us. There are still some treats on the back table for you. And again, I seriously, if somebody wants to talk about anything in the gallery, just let us know and grab one of us. Thank you.